welcome to the stage Global Managing Partner of McKinsey Company, Bob Sternfels.
Well, hi everybody. Thank you. It's my honor to be a fire starter for the next breakout group, New Paradigm for Global Businesses. And as the last discussion session highlighted, the importance of tech for our future is absolutely central, and I fully agree with that. I would offer, though, that to meet the collective challenges, we're going to need more than technology breakthroughs. We're going to need bold and urgent leadership. So for this fire starter, let me tee up three messages. The first message is the stakes are incredibly high. The stakes are incredibly high. And as we look forward over the course of this decade, we're at a crossroads, and I could paint two very different scenarios for how this decade could play out. The first, a new age of prosperity. GDP could grow 30 to 50% over this decade, with a better quality of life for most people, a more sustainable future for our planet. True, sustainable, inclusive growth, one path. Second path doesn't look so good. It has tepid economic recovery, only 10 to 20% increase in GDP growth, less equitable distribution, less sustainable, with worse outcomes for global health and the environment. Two radically different paths. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Let me give a few specifics to this. If you consider climate, if we don't improve the net zero commitments that we've all made, substantially improve, we'll have 1 billion people living in lethal heat by 2050. 1 billion people. If we think about inequality, 7 of 10 people today live in societies with growing inequality. And we've seen the massive stress that places on both public and private institutions. And in terms of economic growth, the bookend scenarios have never been wider than they are today as we forecast what could be. So the stakes are high. Now the second message, however, is we can do this. We can live into the first scenario. At McKinsey, we've done some modeling and believe that we could have 3 to 4% per annum GDP growth over this decade from existing technologies. Similarly, those same technologies, if we look at Europe in particular, could abate 85% of the carbon today. 85% in Europe from existing technologies. And if you look at job creation, there is a scenario with substantial net job growth over this decade. It requires investment in sectors from infrastructure, healthcare to energy. But done right, job growth can outstrip jobs dislocated through technology 2 to 1. But it requires the right focus on upskilling. And the goals of sustainability, inclusion, and growth can also reinforce each other and create a virtuous circle. Let me give some specifics. More inclusive healthcare could add 0.5 point to global GDP growth by 2040. Advancing women's economic potential in the workforce could add 13 trillion to global GDP growth. And growth rates for sustainable products and markets outstrip conventional ones 10 to 20% in all categories. Now, I'm not naive. Driving all three, sustainability, inclusion, and growth, won't be easy, and there's some real tensions that need to be addressed. As technology is implemented at an ever faster rate, 100 million people will need to reskill this decade. 100 million people. And energy transitions, if we don't focus, will be regressive. They will be regressive. If I take the US alone, 60% of low-income households face severe energy burdens, meaning they spend over 10% of total household income on energy. Just transitions have to be a crucial component as we think about climate transition. And I think we all know as business leaders, it's not easy. 40% of our workforce right now wants to change jobs in the next 6 months. The regulatory environment is increasingly uncertain. And we have multiple stakeholder management to lean forward if we want to be bolder. All these things come together. But I'd argue it is a time for us as leaders to embrace long-term capital and to be courageous. Which brings me to my last message. We need to work together, and we need to move quickly. In reaching for sustainable, inclusive growth, we have to work across the public-private divide, as Mike said in his opening. It's the only way we'll find solutions to things like standards for climate, for a mechanism that creates real incentive to invest in human capital, and for a framework that allows us R&D investments to accelerate over this decade to solve some of these toughest problems. We also have to move quickly. One thing that COVID has shown is that enterprise can move faster than any of us expected, which is good news because these problems aren't going to be the problems of the next generation. They're going to be the problems of our leadership generation. So the question I have is, can we lock in this COVID speed to solve these particular issues? So the choice is ours. We have a moment right now to drive sustainable, inclusive growth. That won't be easy, but I'd argue we should accept nothing less. And as we go to this next panel, the question I'd ask each of you is, are we being bold enough as leaders as we plot our course? Thank you.